Hi, Scott.
Hello, Michael.
So, where in the world are you calling in from today?
I am calling in from beautiful Bucks County, Pennsylvania, right outside of Philadelphia.
Beautiful Butts County, Pennsylvania. So, let's talk about your very interesting work, your role, your life, right? So, one of the things I was thinking about, what is it you do, right? Because you've got a very interesting role. And I was scrolling through the comments for some of the sports teams that you own and manage and so on. And one of the things that struck out to me was how many kids are inspired by these players that play in your teams. And it's almost as if the role you have is you're almost an asset manager for the dreams of young children around the world.
That's a really interesting way to put it. I mean, this is a big business. It's a $2.5 billion business, roughly, with 2,000 employees, and we focus a lot on culture and people and talent and innovation,
Yes.
just like most businesses do. But the essence of what we do is to lift up, inspire, and build community. And in many ways, those that we can touch and reach are young people, kids, if you will, and that provides such an incredible platform, as we say at work, to leave the world a little bit better than we found it. So each of us, when you come to work at Harris Blitzer Sports Entertainment, you pledge 76 hours of service,
Mm-hmm.
and we go, and we shut, back when we were in an office, we were shutting down once a month to go serve, and we didn't have to, you weren't required to serve with the group. You could go and coach and teach and mentor and paint and sing in an old folks home, or do whatever it is you were passionate about. But we did provide that opportunity. And a lot of it was based and wrapped around kind of the middle-aged student child.
Yes.
And you could spend years debating whether a basketball player should be the one that inspires children. And I would just argue, okay, well, that's the facts. We actually can reach and touch. And so therefore, how do we leverage that, to lift up and help build the next great generation of leaders? I operate in cities that are struggling. Philadelphia is on the eastern seaboard of the
Yeah.
United States. It has the second highest poverty rate of any major U.S. city.
Wow.
And I operate in Camden, where our world-class, beautiful training facility is. And the average household income is about $13,000 a year. And I operate in Newark, New Jersey, where the New Jersey Devils of the National Hockey League play.
Yeah.
And we have an arena there that's one of the top 10 booked arenas in the world. But that community is rough, tumble, and struggling, to say the least. And what an opportunity to use sports and entertainment to provide a platform to for opportunities to dream. And
I
what's
like that.
amazing is I get the chance to speak with a lot of young people, and I was in Camden at this incredible community center, and I was giving this talk on hopes and dreams. And I came from a relatively difficult background when I was really young, and I always often ask that there are a couple of things you have to do to be successful. One is you have to work hard. Like there is no substitute for hard work. And
Yes.
and the other thing I often talk about with young folks is you have to have a vision of something better than
Mm,
the
I like
current
that.
situation you're in. So those are the two foundational pieces I often talk about. And I remember being a little anxious asking this question, because it was a very young group, and what I was, because I said, like, what do you dream of,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And what I was expecting to hear, like, sadly, and I have a counter to this, was, I want to be the next great Philadelphia 76er. I want to play
Yeah.
football, but I didn't. I mean, I heard the most wonderful answers. I want to join the Air Force.
Wow.
I want to be a police officer. I want to be a firefighter. I want to be a teacher. I want to work at a community center just like this. And it was just such a touching moment. I remember this young little girl. I mean, she's tiny. She said, I want to be a singer. And I mistakenly said, well, you want to come up here and sing with us? You know?
Yeah.
And so this little gal, she couldn't have been up to my hip, got up and sung the most beautiful song I think I'd ever heard. It was from Frozen at the time. If you have kids, you'll know the
Oh,
Disney show.
everyone knows that song, don't worry.
Okay, okay, good. So, and while I can't sing or hum a tune, I can't even read music, to see this gal, she probably was 9 years old, get up and sing in front of 400 people, with such confidence. I left there thinking like, okay, we're gonna be okay. Like, there's so much. This next generation is even smarter, even more confident, even more connected, even more understanding of what the possibilities are. That I just, anytime I'm around the young people in this world, I'm uplifted and excited.
So it sounds to me as if you're not in the business of owning and managing a hockey team and a basketball team. It sounds to me like you're in the business of managing a roster of role models.
Ooh, that's an interesting way to put it. I will say that I've been in this business for 25 years. And 25 years ago, well, I'll say now, our athlete, and these young men are, I mean, Ben Simmons is this global
Yes.
transformational superstar. He's 6 foot 10 inches tall, 240 pounds of muscle, and runs like a freight train.
Yeah.
And Joel Embiid is 7 foot. Ben is from Australia, and Joel is from Cameroon.
Yeah.
And he's 7 foot tall, about 300 pounds, and is the most gifted, talented big man I've ever seen. So you have these massive men, and they come in, and in particular with the infusion of players from around the world,
Yes.
they're just, it's different. They are worldly. I don't mean this, it sounds so almost cliche to say, but they're worldly. They're smart. They understand their brand. They understand their impact and influence in the world. They understand like the way it all comes together. They seem to have a better understanding of the role government plays and of the
Yes.
role the kind of business and public partnership and how that works. And they
Yes.
understand their role. And I will tell you, like, I'm blown away by the influence and impact they have, and the need to do good and the want to do good. I mean, during COVID, Joel's definitely an intellectual.
Yeah.
He was focused on testing for healthcare workers.
Wow.
So he literally invested, I think, $500,000 in a lab at University of Pennsylvania. And then Ben set up a platform so that people around the world could donate money so they could help worthy causes. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And this isn't, back in the
Yeah.
way in the heyday when I got in this business, it was like, hey, can you please help with X? Hey, can you please go to this hospital and see sick kids? Hey, can you please? Now their teams of people are coming to us and say, hey, here's an interesting platform. Can we use your social media channels to
Mm-hmm.
get out there? Hey, can you help elevate what we're doing? I'm like, man, it's fun. It's again, I love. I have a workforce full of millennials and Gen Zers, and I love these generations. I mean, I love them. They're smart, and they
Mm-hmm.
work hard, and they're connected, and they're ambitious, and they understand their role in society. They understand what's happening with the economy. They understand their need to do good and be good, and there's a trade-off for that. They think they should be the CEO after 15 minutes working for you, and they need access and they need complete transparency and all that stuff. But if you give that stuff, boy, you have a tiger by the tail. And unfortunately, we have this incredible group that sees the world very differently.
Yeah, I speak to many CEOs and EVPs and so on, and many of them use something called a net promoter score to manage their businesses and understand how willing a customer is to refer them. But it sounds to me a more important measure for you is whether that young child has a deep connection with a player.
Yes, I mean, let's see. I mean, I don't want to give you the impression that I'm not a capitalist, because I am a
Of
hardcore
course.
capitalist. So, and there is a value chain to that. If a young boy or girl um, watches or attends an NBA game, they're more likely to buy a jersey. They're more likely to buy a ticket. They're more likely to watch us on television. They're more likely to follow us on our social channels. So there is a commercialism too, and we don't track our net promoter score, but we do track several metrics to understand where we are, and how our brand is growing around the world. In particularly, just illustratively in China, we had not made many inroads in China. And for a few years ago, we had the chance to travel and play in China a few games, one in Shanghai and one in Shenzhen. And what a, first of all, eye-opening experience.
Yes.
And secondly, coming out of there, we have hired 4 Chinese native-born employees, and they are not only doing deals but creating content. And so now you imagine the platform we're offering our players. So now we go to our players and say, do you want help building your brand in China? And so now, and our Tobias Harris is another one of our superstar players. And Tobias is like, yes, can you help me? I'll create content every day. Now he goes from essentially oblivious in China to one of the top 10 players followed in China because he's creating content in Mandarin.
Yes.
And so it's like, and while English seems to be the universal language, what a gift if you can play in the fields where you're running, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I think, we've seen that time and time again, and our brand has gone, we're the 4th most followed team in China right now.
Wow.
And
Impressive.
why is that?
Done.
Well, because we're creating content that people want to see and like, and we're getting you behind the scenes, and we're not only showing you, highlights, because they can get those at 10 cents and they can get those anywhere, but we're actually getting you behind the scenes, and we're showing you, what does Joel have for dinner? What new car has Ben driving? So I think from our end, yes, we are in the business of superstars and getting the young people, the children, to follow them, look up to them, admire them. But we've also, we have to run a business. I mean, the salaries are very high that we pay them. They're very well compensated. They might argue not enough. But we've got a lot of pressure to cut the right TV deal and cut the right arena deal and build an arena in some cases, and sell tickets and sponsorships and suites. And there's a whole business behind this madness. But the essence of what we do, which I think you're getting at, the essence of what we do in my eyes is to build community, create community, provide an avenue and opportunity for some escapism, because we need to go back to our roots, and we need to cheer and dance and scream and boo and love and become friends with a perfect stranger because you high five after a big 3-pointer. Like, that stuff matters, and I think it matters now more than ever. And so I feel blessed and grateful to be in this business, and to have the platform that we have to do what we do.
Yes, I mean, you're in the business of, giving people great memories, right? It's quite a powerful place to be. But let's switch gears a little bit, right? If you look at American soft power, it's driven by a number of things, but there's Hollywood, then there's NFL footage, NHL footage, NBA, and there's baseball, right?
Yeah.
So American soft power is driven by those 5 pillars of footage. And it's a very important role. It inspires people all over the world. You mentioned the story of Spud Webb, which I thought was very funny. How many fans this guy had, only because of reruns being played. In terms of how you are thinking globally, is there an active effort to court the world, or is it opportunistic at this point?
Oh, the NBA, the league office is fully focused. Those are rights that they own at the league office. I mean, we just started an African league, a professional basketball league in Africa. Yeah, we have we have offices all over the world, and we have players from all over the world. I mean, last year we had players from 5 continents on our team. Can you even imagine that? Like, it's unthinkable 20 years ago. And now this is, while football is considered the world's game, I think basketball will give it a run for its money. And the difference between the NBA and all the incredible football leagues around the world is this is the one league where the greatest players play. In football, you have Bundesliga, La Liga, EPL. You have all these incredible leagues around the world, but the NBA is truly the one global sports league.
That's a good point. I mean, that's a point that's not really made often. And it's an interesting one because if you look at the Barclays Premier League and so on, you've got different players plying their trades in different leagues with different teams, right? Does having all of the best players in the world playing the most competitive league at the same time give you some advantage in terms of the way you connect with different countries around the world?
I do. I think it gives you the biggest media platform. I do. I think when you can, the way, and you know this better than I do, the world is just getting smaller.
Yes.
And the way fans are consuming media is evolving by the day. And the media companies and the platforms with which we're shown are getting, Alibaba, for example. I
Yeah.
mean, a great example. Tencent, another great example. I mean, these are platforms that you'll see this in the US, but you'll see it maybe 5 years from now or 10 years from now. You can watch a game and click on a pair of shoes and buy them.
That's true.
Like that is
It's
complete,
connected.
immersive, connected, experiential viewing. And so I think, I think that the players, in particular in the NBA, and to the extent football, but you're a little further away. In the NBA, it's 10 men
Yes.
who I'd argue are the best athletes in the world in shorts and tees, and the cameras are right up in your grill. And so you see it all, feel it all. You can feel the emotion. You can see the hunger and the competitive spirit and the hard work and the pain. And I think that's a gift. The way the NBA court is set up, it's set up as a stage. It's not unlike going to a Broadway show
Yes.
in New York. It's like the lights are on. You've got one little stage. You've got cameras all around. You've got people surrounding you. I mean, in the NBA too, you have those courtside seats where you're 5 feet from a player. I mean, it's incredible. And I don't think there's any sport quite like it.
Well, there's an interesting theory in media, technology, and business is that the closer a frame is to a person, the more you develop a connection with them. So if you look at certain sports like football, where the players are quite far away from the field, it's hard to develop that connection. And many people always tell me they like to be ringside at an NBA game because they want to feel that connection with the players, which is hard to get with other sports, right? Just given that.
I love the notion. I always use the phrase, it's a grandma test. Like if your grandmother knows the players on the team, then
Yeah.
you've kind of broken through. But I wonder. My mother-in-law is a huge NBA fan, and she acts as if she knows these players.
Yeah.
Like she knows them. And she doesn't. She never
Yes.
met them. Never been within 100 feet of them. But they are part of her world. And I always think about that. And I think you're right about in terms of the proximity of that camera and closeness of the angle. It does get you that sense that they are part of your family,
Yes.
if you will, in a strange way. It's an amazing phenomenon.
And your mother-in-law is taking your own advice, act as if, right?
Yes. Yes.
So let's switch gears a little bit because your personal life's quite interesting as well. I did not know the trauma you went through when you launched Hopes TV.
Yeah. Well.
And I think it
Trauma.
humanizes you a little bit because when I read there that your credit score took a hit for 7 years, I thought, wow, you're just a normal guy underneath all of this.
Yeah. No, I find that just in general that I think FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, said it best. Although I always butcher this quote, rough seas make the best sailors.
Yes.
And I had this sense that when I was young, that I would read all these books. I love Jack Welch. I love all these. Those were my heroes when I was growing up. I was a little nerdy, so I like the business heroes rather than the basketball heroes. And what I read in every business book I read growing up was like, you're gonna fail. You're gonna fail. Like the best leaders fail. You're gonna go bankrupt. You're gonna get fired. You're gonna. And I was like, yeah, not me. Nah, I have this. As the O'Neill family trait is, what we lack in talent, we make up for in confidence. So I had that one down. And what I found as I've gotten older is that just success and life in general and relationships, it's not linear. They're not linear. And we have all these experiences over time, and they can either make you stronger and smarter because you provide these incredible learning experiences, or they can just get you frustrated. And in this particular instance, it's the dot-com boom era and the bust era. And I had left a really fun job at the Philadelphia Eagles, and I was married. My wife had just retired. She was in the sports business to have our first child,
Mm-hmm.
daughter. And we went out, raised $15 million. We quickly built the number 2 trafficked website in basketball in the world. And voila. I mean, it was like snap your fingers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm out of luck, out of work, and out of money. And I was the president. I was one of the co-founders of the company. And what little money I had, I'd put in. So I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have any money. We essentially charged our way to try to eat going forward. But we were getting foreclosure notices on the house. I mean, you're thinking,
Wow.
what the heck? I just got out of Harvard Business School.
Foreclosure notices.
I'm like, this is supposed to happen. And then we made a terrible move, and no disrespect, I don't want to, maybe I shouldn't use the company name, but we one of those late night, hey, I'll clean up your credit
Yeah,
score.
yeah. Debt
came on.
consolidators, as they call
Yeah,
them.
and they shred your credit for 7 years, and what that does, I didn't even understand credit
Yeah.
at the time, but what that does is it makes everything hard. You go to buy a house, it's hard.
You can't do
You
anything.
go to rent an apartment, it's hard. You go to buy a car, it's hard. And you can do it. You just have to pay twice as much as everybody else. So I
Wow.
that experience. Now, do I wish I didn't have that experience? Of course.
Yes.
Okay. However, like I look today. There's a great book right now called The Psychology of Money. If anybody's interested, it's the best book on money I've read. But what do I have, per our collective bargaining agreement, we are directed to talk to the players about business once a year.
Yes.
My fire and brimstone speech is about money and how you save your money. Because and how difficult must it be to be young? I mean, these guys peak at 28. So to have your peak earning years before you're 28. And I think of myself, like, what did I know when I was 22 years old, 24 years old about money, about saving, about investing, about compounding interest, about, zero. And but yes, did I take it on the chin? I did. And that wasn't the only time. I wish it were. But man, what a great learning experience. And one I hope nobody else has. And so I hope, and I have 3 daughters, and I tell them 20% of their pay, invest. They're all young.
At the least.
Yeah.
What's interesting
when you're young,
about this?
I'm not making any money, but yes, 20% gets you a nice life when you get older.
Yes, the principle of compounding interest. What's interesting about this is that this experience also helps you understand the experiences of your fans, right? Because they're just normal people. Some of them have debt problems and so on. And it gets you in touch with how your fans experience the world.
Yeah, again, I think when we go through the world, we see it very much. Like someone might see me and say, "Oh, he's the CEO of a sports team.
Yeah.
That's the perfect job." Like, yeah, that perfect job has me working 150 nights till midnight.
Yes.
And so, in that perfect job comes with an incredible amount of stress and pressure. And that perfect job, from the outside, it's like, it's like when you see your neighbors and you're like, "Oh, what a perfect family." Hey, note to self: there is no perfect family.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has their own struggles, and we mask them in different ways. And part of what I've learned over time is that's okay. There is no, I worked for David Stern, the former commissioner of the NBA, God rest his soul, passed away a couple of years ago. But he used to say he used to drive us for the relentless pursuit of perfection.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not sure that's healthy, quite frankly. Relentless pursuit of excellence, or, hey, I'm going to be the best version of myself. I like those.
Yes.
But we have to, especially now coming through COVID and living the way we've been living. I want everyone to give themselves a little bit of a break.
Yeah.
Don't put so much pressure on yourself. Don't try to be perfect. It's okay. Just be the best version of yourself at that time. And you know what? There is a tremendous amount, I'm sure your listeners will appreciate this, of mental health issues. And I think that's going to be the next great issue that we as a society and we as business leaders are going to have to try to solve. People are struggling right now, and generally it's like we need to go back to some basics: mind, body, soul. It's like, what are you doing for your mind? What are you doing for your body? And what are you doing for your soul every day? And we need to take care of ourselves, and we need to create those environments and opportunities in our workplace in our homes with our families, in our communities, in our church groups, or wherever we are, to make sure that there is an environment where we talk about mental health, and we talk about the importance of sleep, and we talk about the importance of finding stillness, and we talk about exercise, and we talk about the power of learning and reading, and what that can do to your health. And it's all this whole amalgamation of little pieces that will kind of, I think, keep you healthier than you otherwise will be. It's not a solve for the world, but I think there's some little things we can each do. And I think we are going to have our hands full over the next 10 years.
You're going in a direction that I actually want to take the conversation because, before this call, I read your memoir. And one of the things I've noticed is that we have a lot of listeners who are investment banking, private equity, venture capital, management consulting, business, and so on. And there's a lot of focus in the business world to train people to believe that the only way to be successful and the best way to be successful is to learn the hard skills. And no one ever talks about meditation, knowing who you are before you can inspire others, taking care of your mental health, sleeping well, eating well, and so on. It's almost as if those are the unspoken rules of success that nobody talks about until it's too late.
Yeah. I mean, could you imagine if we had the opportunity to remake the educational system? Like, just think about that as an issue that you'd want to tackle, right?
Yes.
If you were young, you'd be talking about, with all the incredible AI, you'd be talking about personalized learning, right? Of course. And of course, we'd probably be talking about that some incredible children grow up through the system thinking they're not smart.
Yeah.
When the reality is they are just not equipped, or their skill sets don't match what's required to be successful in school. Right? That'd be the things we tackle. And then we'd get older and we'd get into high school or college, and we'd be talking about, okay, let's talk about financial planning and budgeting. Let's talk about how you take care of yourself. Let's talk about, and it's not a health class that I had, that doesn't, that's not what we need, and we'd be talking about personalized diets for your DNA. And we'd actually be sculpting what stillness looked like. And we'd be teaching people how to meditate and the power of stillness and what that does to help your brain, allow your brain to kind of reset so that you can be more effective and learn. And so that notion of the 80s and 90s of go, yeah. run as hard as you can. And look, I'm a hard charger. I'm a type A loon. And I've just learned over time that I've got to find that peace and stillness to be more effective and to stay healthy. And yes, I think we have a long way to go. And the hard skin. By the way, I work for two incredible private equity giants, Josh Harris and David Blitzer. Yes. And we have a venture arm, and I've got an innovation lab. So I'm very familiar with those groups and how hard they run and how different their cultures are. But I just wonder, does it have to be? Could you get more extraordinary results by doing things a little differently? I would argue yes.
Yes. I mean, you mentioned some of the tools that you use, things like getting perspective and so on. What would you recommend? I mean, there's a lot of listeners here who are struggling. We get emails from listeners all over the world telling me that they're struggling mentally, physically. There's too much fatigue. They're working from home. There's no boundary between work and the office. They don't think leadership is listening to them. They can't leave. They can't go for interviews. They're stuck. What would you advise them? How would you coach them? Is there any tool or tip or technique that you use that helps you put things in perspective?
Sure. Yeah, sure. I mean, one is, we used to, when I was growing up, we used to say, see the forest instead of the tree right in front of you. But now we use the phrase, just widen your lens. I think that's just, when we talk about perspective, you definitely need to widen your lens. And one way to do that is really simple. And that's just to recognize with some gratitude every day, 2 or 3 things in your day that you're grateful for. And again, I know this might be coming off to some of your hard chargers as this soft stuff. I'm ready to turn this off. I can tell you this because I've worked in a pretty sharp elbow business for some time. Just to give you a sense of how I operate, I've got about 2,000 employees. there are 12 that remain from when I got here. And
Wow.
and that's 8 years. So I will say, like, these soft skills, it's not soft. That's just called soft
Mm-hmm.
skills. Like, it still has to be a culture of accountability to be effective. But I'm saying it's like you have to spend time, in particular with your young employees, doing things like service.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd start. So go back to your question. I would start with gratitude for one. Number two is, like, you need an accountability partner. And so if for me, it's my wife. And it doesn't have to be your wife. It could be your best friend. It can be
Sure.
somebody at work. But for me, I remember coming home one day in a particularly sour mood after losing. And my wife's like, how bad are your teams this year? I'm like, they're pretty bad. I said, we're rebuilding. You know this. And she's like, well, how many games are you going to lose? And I said, about 100. She's like, so you're going to be pissed off 100 nights a year? That's your plan?
It's a good year for you.
That's an accountability partner. If I'm at dinner and I'm looking down at my phone, my wife will say, I'll wait. And that's her way of saying, like, I know you think whatever you're doing is more important than sitting here talking to me, but I'll wait. And so, like, who is that person in your life that's going to tell you the truth and help hold you accountable? And the third thing I'd say is, like, you have to commit to something for your mind, something for your body, and something for your soul every day. Okay. And you've got to get that heart rate up physically. That's easy enough. That's the easy one, right? You just 6:30 a.m. I'm on my Peloton. I go.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be hard. You go for a walk, but you've got to get that heart rate going. For your mind, you have to learn something outside of your work. And for your soul, some people, pray and read scriptures, and other people meditate. Other people will find yoga is that, or sitting down and listening to the birds chirp. You've got to find 5 minutes of stillness a day. And so I think that would be my formula to those who are struggling.
It's not a difficult formula, right? It's just about following it in a disciplined way.
I know, but you know what happens in January is we set all these ambitious goals,
Yeah.
And nothing happens by February. And so you either have to decide this is important or stop complaining. And
Yes.
that's my bit, because you can just say, well, hey, I'm overweight. And I'm like, okay, what did you have? Well, how about the double cheeseburger you had for lunch and you haven't worked out in 4 weeks? So you can do that. Like, I'm not here to judge anybody.
Sure.
People have to live the way they want to live. But you either complain or you make different decisions. And so I think but you're absolutely right.
I want to circle back to something you said a few minutes ago, because I think it is a misunderstanding that occurs in business and probably other areas as well. The one is that soft skills doesn't mean you're soft in business. You still have demanding targets. You still motivate your teams. You still drive your teams, but you deploy different skills to get them to still outperform, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's been proven time and time again that the reason people leave a work, the number one reason is because they're not getting enough from their manager, right? It could be they're not getting enough appreciation. It could be they're not getting enough love. It could be they're not getting enough direction, or they're not getting enough opportunity, whatever that is. Manager, 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 leader, leader, leader. And so I think there's some simple things that we can do as managers and leaders of companies to drive more extraordinary performance. But that starts with recruiting, attracting, developing, and retaining the best talent in the world. Mm-hmm. And one way to do that, create an incredible place to work. And how do you do that? Well, you have to decide, what is the vision and mission? What do I stand for? When people walk in the door, what does it look like? What does our onboarding program say about who we are? I remember I started a job at the NBA a long time ago, and I was an early riser, and this was pre 9/11. So I walked right up to my floors, my first day. I sat for an hour outside the door waiting for someone to come in. When I came in, the guy opens the door, hey, are you the new guy? I'm the new guy. They're like, oh, we didn't know you were coming in today. It took a month before I had a computer, a business card, a phone, an office. So it's like, okay, well, what matters? Well, onboarding matters. Well, like, people should know, like, because people will self-select in. When you go to Disney, people are like, whoa, what incredible people work here. Like, happy people are self-selecting into Disney because they know what it stands for. Do you know what your company stands for? Mm-hmm. Do you know, because if you know, then you can create that environment. And you might say, hey, I want a kill or be killed environment. That's not what I would choose, but if you choose that, that's what you'll have. And you have to, as leaders, we have to role model the behavior that we're expecting, and that's the hardest thing for a lot of us.
Yeah, and I like the way you say this because the way you're interpreting soft skills is it's demonstrating or deploying soft skills is about understanding what's happening beneath the surface, what drives someone. And you can't manage people unless you can do that, right?
Yes, and again, we all have different size businesses, and as
Yes.
businesses scale, it definitely becomes an exercise of train the trainer. I've been accused. I said, like, what if you had my team in front of a firing squad, they would say, this guy sets unreasonable goals, and that's true. I set unreasonable targets. I'm also extremely demanding, and I hold my team accountable. They also have incredible freedom. They're also told that I love them all the time,
Yeah.
and that I'm rooting for them. And but look, that is my path and my rhythm. But the one trait I've found, and I work with a lot of incredible young leaders, is the best ones are their authentic selves. And so if you're a rah rah, I'm not a rah rah guy, but if you're a rah rah guy, be a rah rah guy.
Yeah.
But if you're not, don't try to be one. You know, if you're a stick to the numbers guy, it's okay. You can stick to the numbers. You can be a stick to the numbers guy. You might have to put people around you to give some of that attention, and some of that flair and some of that connectivity that you might not naturally have. That's okay, but you can still be an extraordinary leader. But you
Yes.
have to find, in my experience, it's being your authentic self is the first thing you have to commit to. You have to know yourself and then commit to it, and then make sure that you round out the team. Because if you're looking for a unicorn to run a company, I haven't met him or her. And so we all have these gaping holes, and we try when we fill them with great talent. There are very complementary skill sets that we have.
So most of the listeners here, they work in roles whereby it's obviously high pressure, very demanding, lots of money on the line in terms of decisions they make on a daily, weekly basis. But many of them suffer from self-doubt, the imposter syndrome and so on. And in their situation, it's different because they don't have people every day seeing how their teams perform. In your case, every day a team plays, the entire world sees who did well, who did worse. And there's a running commentary from the press, from the media, from fans, and so on. How do you separate what everyone is saying from what
Oh
you
man,
need to know to
that's
make a
such
decision?
yeah, it's a wonderful question. We are in a fishbowl, and
I think it's
and
more like a Shark Tank, really.
yeah, that's probably better said. But the thing is I'll answer your question in a second, but like the reality is like that's the gift. I mean,
Yes.
that Shark Tank allows us to build a business. I mean, can you imagine just a regular company and people are paying to wear your logo on their shirts? I mean, like, it doesn't
No.
make sense, right? Or that 8 people in Philadelphia are paid to cover your team. Like, the rest of the world is scrapping and hustling to get one article written about them.
Yes, true.
Might have the greatest product release in history, or had the greatest quarter in history, and they're scratching and clawing to get that article written.
Yes.
For us, we have people protecting so we can do fewer. And so you definitely are in that. It's definitely that environment. Is it different? I don't know. Having worked for a public company when I was at Madison Square Garden, look, we had a lot of pressure on us on the court and on the stage, but also those quarterly earnings came quickly every quarter. So I'm not sure how different it is. They're different size cameras, if you will. But I think we're all under pressure. I think what social media has done is opened up. My daughter was asking me if she's young, there were more tsunamis, tornadoes, and hurricanes when I was growing up or now. And I said, I have no idea. I'm imagining they're about the same, but we know of everyone now. And it's not too dissimilar at work. I'm sure there were problems, issues, and challenges at work 15 years ago too. We just know of all of them now because we almost have, I don't want to say perfect information, we have much more transparency in terms of what is happening. There are very few secrets anywhere about anything in business or life. And there's some of that that's wonderful, and there's some of that that's awful. And it's kind of, I think it's an interesting way to think about it.
Yeah, I like the way you frame it. How do you, leaving aside the strategy of the business and how you make decisions for the business, personally, how do you separate what's written about you? Because obviously everyone has an opinion, and this is the United States of America. It's usually not a very flattering opinion. How do you separate yourself from that? Do you read what people write about you? And if you do, how
I
do you
do, but I
stay your
wish I
course?
didn't. I really wish I didn't, and I do. And I'm surprised that I am more fragile when reading that stuff, or as fragile as I am.
Yes.
Um, and
The words
disappointed.
fragile and lead of a sports organization normally don't go together, but we'll let it slide.
Yeah, no, I wish I were I wish I were strong enough not to hit the mentions button on Twitter. You know,
Yeah.
I wish that when nasty things were written, I would just tuck it away and not read it. But I'm a consumer of a lot of media, and certainly around our brands, and so I consume everything. And it's disappointing. Like I consider myself, very self-aware, comfortable and confident in who I am. I know when I make mistakes, and I make a lot of them. And for me, that is something I wish I could get better at, the discipline not to read. And when I do read it, it hurts, and that's on me, because like I said, it's the same analogy I used before. It's like you've got to pull that camera back. I mean, when you drill in on one point or one decision or one mistake or one game or one deal, you know, you can put a lot of pressure on yourself and on that analysis. But you pull that camera back and you say, okay, I've been here 8 years. You know, I've probably made 1,000 mistakes, but we've grown the value of the company 5 times. We've gone from the worst team in the league to the best team in the East. We've gone from the lowest season ticket base to the highest season ticket base. We're doing okay, you know? And so I think that's the perspective we all have to
Mm-hmm.
have, whether that's with a relationship, whether that's with something that's written about us, whether that's with a mistake or decision we make. It's like, give yourself a break,
Yeah.
but I wish I was stronger.
Well, let's talk about your own starting lineup for your basketball team, right? Lisa, Eliza, Alexa, Kyra, and yourself. How do you manage your family life? I mean, it sounds as if you've gone through a process of finding out what works for you, how to build relationships. You seem to have also practiced journaling and so on. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Um, I was, again, you have this vision of what you want to be
Yeah.
and yet you have your first child and you think this is going to be so amazing and it's going to be easy, and it's hard, you
Yes.
know, and I have 3 of them, and they're now 21, 17, and 14.
Wow, they're all grown up.
Yeah, they're all grown up, and it's an adventure. And
Yes.
my older one is now out of the house, and so we no longer parent her, we just coach her,
Yes.
and we try to share experiences with her, and we help her when she struggles. The other two we're still leaning on pretty hard, and the world is complicated. The world is hard. It's hard for a junior high kid, and it's hard for a high schooler. There's way too much social media access, and there's way too much nasty stuff that they're reading,
Mm-hmm.
and I wish that world were easier for them. But in terms of how I deal with it, I have this notion that we just have a limited amount of time, both in our lives, to be a little more fatalistic, but in our day. And when you're dealing with families, um, something has to give, if you will, right? So
Mm-hmm.
one is like, what are you going to give up to make sure that you're the dad you aspire to be? So I spent a lot of time thinking about that. And I commit to things that you might not commit to. I left an all-star game in Chicago a couple of years ago to go coach an 8th grade girls team, a rec league team in
Wow.
basketball.
That's
And
commitment.
so
Right
you have
there,
to make
folks. That's a
decisions,
true father.
and I've got a trip with Kira to Mozambique that might end up during the finals this year. And so, and it's just an incredible service trip. We'll be doing work that's important in a place that needs it. And that'll be fascinating. You can check back in with how that goes. So I think you've got to commit to being there. The other thing I've recognized, as a dad, is that you don't have much time. It's not like,
Yes.
you just don't have it. I mean, they're in school. I mean, forget about the virtual school they're in now, but in a normal cadence, they get up. There's chaos in our house in the morning. I mean, our morning is literally chaos. Like, I'm hoping we get out without a tears or a shout. Right? It's chaos. So, I'm at work. If I get home, it's a non-game day. They play basketball and cheer, so they're probably at an after-school activity. Then they're doing homework. How much time am I getting? Do I get an hour?
Yeah.
Do I get 2 hours? And so I better spend that hour or 2 hours or whatever I get, 30 minutes a night, and I better be zeroed in and focused and be where my feet are, 100%. Not checking my phone, not flipping on a bad TV show that I shouldn't be watching anyway, not like cruising through whatever I'm cruising through online. It's like, man, think about the limited time you have and make it count. I will tell you that the best trip I have ever had with my daughters was after Madison Square Garden.
Hmm.
I had a true quote unquote garden league. So I was out and we traveled, went to Europe, and my phone. I checked my phone in the morning. I checked my phone in the evening. It never left the room. And I think about, like, if you ask them what's the best trip they ever had, all three of them would say that's the best trip you ever had. And I think, like, why? Because I was 100% present and grounded with them. There's nothing else that was in my life. Now, how perfect am I at that? I'm not perfect at it. But do I put things in place at work? Sure. I have a table in all our conference rooms that you check your phone when you walk into a conference room.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's good. We have a little lock box here. We throw the phones in. Wouldn't it be great if you could literally just put the phone down and pick your head up? There's a whole world out there. And I think we have to get and find discipline in how we leverage our media and social media and how we treat the time we have together, because it's just not enough of it.
So it sounds as if your philosophy, not just with family, but also at work, is to fully commit to the time you're at.
Yes, I think that be where your feet are. That is 100%. When you are at work, be at work. And by the way, you know how crazy the line. There used to be this firm line in the sand. Home, work.
Yes.
It's gone.
Now it's gone.
It's gone.
Eviscerated.
Right. It was a thin line, and then COVID just blew it up. Now we actually see your kids, your dog, your laundry room. I literally was on a call this morning, and there was somebody in the background was a bathroom, but he had just I thought it was his real bathroom. And I said, Will, is that your bathroom? He said, no, it was a virtual thing. And I was on a last call. It was a joke. And blah, blah. And I was like, of course, though, it's like we've seen every ounce of people, and there's beauty to that. Yes. And there's connection with that, and there's opportunity with that. But there's also like that chance where you mentioned it earlier, like, do you get lost? Like, can I not turn it off? Do I not find time for my mind, body, soul stuff? Do I not make time to connect with my partner, or go for a walk, or to, sit down and read a book together, or to, I don't know, go draw, go do something, connect, find connection points. But it's harder. It is harder. And it's only you. Like, one tactic I love is, which is really helpful, is I have this notion of WMI, what's most important. And so once you understand what's most important to you, and can you imagine every Friday doing a little audit of your calendar? So you know what's most important. Like, once you know, like, and if you're not going to live it, you should just change what's most important. But you go through your calendar, and what you'll find, unfortunately, is about 20% of what you do goes to your WMI. And that's not great. And now you're going to have different what's most important at work and different what's most important at home. But, like, either say it's most important and commit to it. Because the notion that you'll spend, as you get up, the higher you get up the chain at work, it's like the bigger the project, the more time you should be spending on it.
Yes.
Because you have say, you have control, you have influence, you have opportunity. And what happens is we fill our days with a bunch of crap that doesn't matter.
You have to be strategic about this, right? Because think about this, right? Imagine you have dinner with your wife, Lisa, right? And you are not fully committed to that conversation. Can you imagine the long-term damage if you do that during every dinner for a year?
Yeah. No, it would not be. By the way, she'll let me know. So
She'll let you.
I'm not married wallflower, but yes, no, but you're absolutely right. Like that, and it's like, but think of the other side. Think if I'm attentive, curious, connected.
Mm.
I think of the difference that has not only in my life, but in her life, her friends' lives, because she'll touch a lot of people, and our children's life. And
Yes.
so now, like the exponential impact of your commitment to be connected is real and meaningful.
Yes. I have a lot of friends who go to these fancy restaurants. They always tell me the food was so bad, the food was so bad. But I always tell them, how can the food be bad if you went with good company?
Oh, I love that.
Because in my experience, it doesn't matter what you're eating and where you're eating it, but if you're having the time of your life with great conversation and great people, it's always going to be memorable, right?
Oh, it's so true. I mean, you know, that again, I go back to that family dinner. I mean, both my folks worked a ton, so the family dinner was the one place we would congregate, and on
Yes.
weekends we would stay at our dinner table for hours. I mean, we can't sit here for 25 minutes, you know?
Yeah.
And again, the world has changed and our attention spans have changed and our needs have changed. But man, the power of that time, it's okay if it's 25 minutes, if it's meaningful. Like, what does your conversation look like? What are you asking your children? Because, if you have teenagers, if you're listening, you have teenagers, how was school? Good. What did you learn today? Nothing. Well, tell me something about your
Yes.
class. It's fine. So we it's on us. This is on us.
Yeah.
Okay, we have to figure out what different questions to ask. We have to, just like you do at work, you have to do at home. It's like we're at our best when we are working, talking, engaging at the level of our partner, at our employee, at our children. Like, what is interesting to my 14-year-old is Stranger Things, this Netflix series. Okay. You better bet I'm watching Stranger Things so I can talk to her about it. It's really important to her. She's like editing videos and putting them online. Like, it's really that to her is the center of the universe right now. Do I want to watch that show? No, I do not. Am I interested in it? Nope. But you better bet that I haven't watched it now, all three seasons, so I can connect with her. I know what she's talking about, and I'm celebrating that with her. And that's our jobs as parents. It's like we have to find that common ground. It's not on her. She's 14. She doesn't have any common ground.
Yeah,
And so
that's very well said.
yeah.
I just want to pull up a point here. This also applies to your work environment, right? Because if you think of all work, whether it's spreadsheets and so on, it comes down to the relationships you have with people. And if you don't manage those well, be in the moment or be where your feet are, as you said, those will deteriorate over the long term. It's not just about home.
No. I truly believe that almost all lessons can be applied across almost all aspects of your life. I always find that the simpler the concept, typically the more true it is. And the more true it is, typically it applies whether you're at work, at home. And relationships they're complicated at work. You have the power dynamic is interesting. It's like, what type of relationship do you want with your boss and your boss want with you?
Yes.
And what does it look like with a peer? Are you competitive? Or are you collaborative? What does that look like? And how do you interact? And then people that work for you, what does that look like and feel like? And it's complicated. Just like a family relationship is complicated because you're in the same family forever.
Yes.
And so it creates different dynamics, and so you can either let them happen, or you can actively manage them. And
yes.
and we've all had wonderful interactions and relationships at work, and we've all had things that have gone sideways. And I found that for me anyway, that when I'm living my commitments and who I am and who I purport to be, and if there's an issue, I deal with it. And if there's a problem, I address it. And if there's an expectation not being met, we have a conversation. And if there's something that's going right, I talk about it. But I had this incredible experience, which is not going to sound great, is I had this this woman. She no longer works with me, but her name is Amy Heaver.
Mm-hmm.
She was running a foundation, and I was doing a 6-month check-in, and extremely talented, bright, completely was transforming the way we did community giving. And I said, hey, just 6-month check. This will be a quick meeting. How are you doing? Feedback's been great on you, blah, blah, blah. You're doing great. Here's what I've seen you do really well. Tell me if there's anything you need me to do differently, or is there any area you're struggling where you need resources? And she said, your leadership development meeting is the worst meeting of my month. And I was like, whoa. I said, because that's my most fun meeting. I do like a monthly leadership development meeting. I have an article or a podcast or a video. I send it out in advance. I bring the group together. We break out into groups. We have small group discussion. I pull from the group. I mean, to me, it's like I get to interact with the group 2 or 3 levels down from my normal directs. So I get interaction, and then I sit with them and engage, and we talk about everything from life, love, the pursuit of happiness to work and what we're doing. So, and I was like, wow. Oh, okay. So tell me more. And she said, well, I'm terrified of you calling on me. And I was like, huh. Now that's not my world. I come from a type A world. We debate and that's what we do. I mean, we get in a room and fight it out. I mean, that's how we've gotten to a lot of decisions. I was like, huh, And so I said, okay, here's the deal. I'll never call on you. She's like, really? I'm like, you will never be called on. If you want to raise your hand at one point, raise your hand, but you're good. She's like, okay, that make me feel better. Then everything's great. And I was like, holy moly.
Wow.
It's bad. Another situation when I was at the NBA, my youngest daughter's an introvert. I didn't even really know what an introvert was, by the way. I thought it was doesn't like talking to people. And effectively, it's where you get your energy from.
That's true.
Right? So it's extroverts get their energy from people, and introverts get their energy when they're alone. And I was running my group at the NBA, which was a really high, super performing group, it was a consulting group for the teams on behalf of the league. So it was a pretty cool group where we're building best practices, traveling all over the place, coming in, debating issues, trying to build models. It was really, really fun. And I was losing some people and didn't really know why. I hadn't even processed it because it was such a high performing group. Mm-hmm. And my daughter starts getting a little older, and I'm reading now about introverts. I'm just reading books, I'm like, oh man, I need to change my approach at work. Cause I'm treating everybody like they're like me. Yeah. Not everybody's like me. And in fact, introverts are smarter, and they're more intuitive, and they're more creative. And I'm like, okay, I've shut all that out for 3 years because they weren't thriving in that environment. And so I had to kind of adjust the way I was managing and leading. And what incredible insight to get from at that point, I think she was 6 years old. I was like, whoa. So I think we all have to be in this environment where we call it palms up, just open, as opposed to like your arms crossed. You're open to learning. You're open to people. You're open to new ideas. You're not so convinced that you know it all. You actually walk into every conversation interested that you could learn something, or you're interested in someone's ideas. And I think for me, that's been my evolution as a leader and manager as I've grown older.
Yeah, but what you say is very interesting, right? If you unpack what you're saying, you almost have to distinguish between the health and performance of a relationship. Sometimes you can be working with someone, delivering great things, but the underlying mechanics of that relationship is where you're pushing them away because they don't feel comfortable, or they could be an introvert and you're treating them like an extrovert. Other times, the relationship could be great. I mean, it's very healthy, but the performance is not there. And it sounds as if, and I think everyone would agree, you want a healthy relationship at all times, even if the performance goes up and down. You can always fix it.
Yeah, I think that's such a better way to articulate it than I did. And I would only say that the therefore to me then is, as a leader, it can't be one size fits all. Yes. It can't be like, this is how I do it. That literally 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20, maybe. Okay, now, never. It's like, this is the age of personalization. Yes, it's the age of personalization. That's a wonderful way of saying it. In content and the way we have to lead. Yes. And I agree with you. I think that's as well put as I've ever heard it.
Yeah, but I like the way you say the age of personalization, because we talk about it a lot about consumer products and segmenting to a market of one, but we never talk about that in terms of the way we manage teams, right?
Right.
I think you're the first person, I've spoken to many CEOs, who's ever talked about the age of personalization when it comes to managing, motivating, and leading teams to places they never thought they could have been led before.
That's your next book.
We can co-write it.
Oh, that sounds good. I just want to. I don't want to be the guy that quotes on the back. That's what I want to be.
Okay, that's good enough for me. Thank you so much, Scott. I really enjoyed this conversation. It was one of the better ones I've had.
I did too. I really appreciate you, all the work you're doing, and then the podcast. I know how much work this is, and your continued commitment to push us to be better, to lead more effectively, and to drive a more effective strategy and make the world better. And I appreciate that.
No, it's wonderful. And I mean, it's always nice to speak to someone who's actually motivating millions of people around the world to understand what happens in their psyche. How do they think about things? And I must say, when I was reading your book, I was very impressed to see how close you are to religion, faith, family, and so on. Because today, those things tend to be sidelined when people talk about performance. It's as if it's not as important as it should be.
Yes, I think that the whole world of how we talk about, again, I think the pandemic will bring a lot more of this as we create the new normal, because we've seen more. And so that conversation is going to be much more than, did you process payroll, to how was Sally's soccer game? And I think we as leaders have to be better and can be better.
We're bringing back community to capitalism.
Yes. Oh, that's a good one too. It's your third
Take
book.
care, Scott. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Anything, anytime on my end.
Perfect. Ciao.
Take care.